Post-match chat is live, and we're going to be talking about this very exciting series that has just concluded between India and England. India hosting England. It's been quite a while and quite a series as well. India comprehensively, if I may say, wiping the floor with England, really 3-1, winning the last test match by an innings inside 3 days. They won the last one inside 2 days. It's absurd. It's all crazy, and we're going to break it all down for you. It's been very, very fascinating. Really excited to have with me some very special guests today, some great friends, great broadcasters. I've got Nikesh Rughani, Ankur Desai, and of course the stalwart here at Post-Match Chat, Mr. Armaan Kirmani. Welcome, guys. It's been a great day for Indian cricket. Nikesh, if I can start with you, what's the significance of this 3-1 win against hosting England in India?
Well, I mean, there's no great surprise that India eventually went on to win this series. I know things didn't start well for them in that first test match in Chennai, but coming into the series, they were huge favourites. There was, of course, a lot of talk, a lot of focus on the fact that both of these sides were still in with a shout of making the World Test Championship final. And I suppose that's what this series all boiled down to, who could get that result to ensure that they met New Zealand at Lord's. Of course, India needed to win the series. 2-1 would have done it. In the end, it was 3-1. But going into that final test, despite all that had happened in the second test in Chennai, the thrashing that England took in Ahmedabad inside 2 days with the pink ball, they were still in it. They still had a chance. If they went on and won that final test in Ahmedabad against the odds, then they would have been there at Lord's. Australia would have been there at Lord's. Facing New Zealand. India would have been knocked out. So there still was a lot of significance on that final test, which is always great to see in a series. But at the end of the day, no one's really surprised by the result overall, are they?
No, absolutely. You're a lot of cricketers before the series as well were looking for a 4-0 to India, or a very dominant performance, and in the end, that's kind of what it was. Ankur, since Nikesh brings it up, tell me, World Test Championship. Obviously, I'm excited about it as a cricket fan. I'm looking forward to seeing it. As a Pakistan fan, I was hoping they'd be in the mix, but they weren't. And then England were in the mix. And, now it's going to be India versus New Zealand in the final with Australia out of contention. But, Virat Kohli very recently in an interview suggested that his team weren't particularly bothered about the World Test Championship. They approach every test match with the same professionalism. Like, is there a sense of excitement within the Indian contingent about the World Test Championship?
I reckon so, because Ravichandran Ashwin, he said the same. When he got his Man of the Series award today, he talked up the fact that the most satisfying thing is that they're going to be playing in that final. So it's obviously prestigious, home of cricket. They're going to be playing at Lord's, and it's part of India's, I suppose, plan or master plan for world domination. They want to hold every title, don't they? They want to be World T20 champions later this year. They're probably gutted they're not the World 50 over champions. If they become the World Test champions, eventually they might try and start conquering galaxies far and beyond. So it's that sort of philosophy that they just are a juggernaut and they want to win everything they can. And they want to become the most dominant side in not just Test cricket, but I think all formats. And I think this goes to show that they do take Test cricket seriously, the BCCI, and especially Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri as well. So I think that they'll be excited and motivated, and it'll be good for them, I suppose, leading into the summer series against England later in the year. So, I think exciting times for Indian cricket at the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. A lot of good, exciting cricket to come. But for England, Armaan, they've got a chance to get revenge, I guess, when they host India a little bit later this summer. What do you think England are going to take away from the series? Because, they went into it with a win in Sri Lanka, an impressive away win in Sri Lanka. And they came into this with a little bit of expectation, I'm sure. I know most critics were saying India are going to wipe the floor with them and that kind of stuff. And ultimately they did. But, it's not been all bad. What do you think they take away?
They should take away just how non-seriously they've approached this series. They messed up with Moeen Ali when he left. They didn't handle that situation very well. They had a convincing display in Sri Lanka. Then they came here. They had a very convincing display in the first test. And then they've just forgotten how to hold a cricket bat. And they've seen a turning wicket. Their minds have gone. Second test, third test, fourth test. I think apart from Joe Root, nobody scored. I think there was a stat that was only one 50-run partnership in the last three tests since the first test. England really need to have a long, hard thing. They've been resting players in such an important series. They could have made the World Championship final at the beginning of the series, they weren't playing their experienced seam bowlers all the way through. They were resting players. They were changing the wicket keepers around. They haven't approached it in all seriousness with the full vigor that you would expect them to, especially since the first World Test Championship is happening at the home of cricket in their home country. So I think the first thing they need to do is take a hard, long look at themselves and think, what the hell were they doing in this series? They've disappointed a lot of fans. They haven't lived up to their own expectations. And I'm really not bothered about them taking revenge. It'd be nice for them to just show they still want to play Test cricket, and that would be a start.
Wow, scathing stuff. I mean, I will say that, Dan Lawrence was very impressive and got 250s in the series and looks like a great prospect. But there has been a sense of mental disintegration. I've got to acknowledge what you're saying here, Armaan. And Nikesh, tell me, I mean, I know you saw all the tweets after the third Test match. Oh, the pitch is bad, and it's poorly prepared. It's not sporting. Pitches should be prepared for good Test cricket. Ultimately, both teams played on the pitch, and one played better than the other. Is it all kind of what's going on between the ears for England?
I think a lot of that is definitely true, particularly what happened in Chennai in the second Test match. Okay, that was literally spinning. There were puffs of dust on day one, and it was very difficult to play the spinning ball. And India again did better in Chennai in that second Test match. We got Ravichandran Ashwin down the order scoring 100, showing the England top order how to bat on a wicket like that. It is possible, if you're good enough in those conditions, to bat on those wickets. The third Test, I think it was blown out of proportion, really. When you look at 21 out of the 30 wickets to fall were to straight deliveries. And even in the post-match, Joe Root and any other of the sort of people from the England camp who came out and gave those press conferences all talked about the pink ball and the extra lacquer on it, the extra plastic coating, the fact it was skidding on a lot more than they expected, and that made it a lot more difficult for them to face the likes of Akshar Patel in particular. When you see the odd one turning and then you're playing for the turn and then all of a sudden it skids on and bowls you or catches you LBW plumb in front. And I think both sides were guilty of not playing that very well. Of course, England's team selection is another issue. To go into a Test match in India with just one recognised spinner when you know that India are probably going to play three of theirs, it just shows real poor selection there on their part. But I think a lot, was made about the pitch. But the 22 players ultimately who played on it, I'd rather listen to what they have to say, and nobody has actually said it was a poor wicket. Nobody said that it was unfair that it was turning from day one. It was just they all talked about the ball and their poor batting skills. And, ultimately England, they had those scars from Chennai and have never really recovered since.
Virat Kohli said something interesting, guys, didn't he, about, I think ahead of this fourth and final Test match, he came out and said, look, we don't crib about conditions or wickets when we go to places like New Zealand, England or Australia. So why is there so much chat about people coming over to India? And I think he was sort of having a word about the media, because in a lot of the media press conferences before this game, there was a lot of chat from journalists asking questions about the pitch. And I suppose with Joe Root taking 5 for 8, if Root takes 5 for 8, then a lot of people are going to start saying, well, hang on, how's that happen? But I think Kohli and Ashwin themselves said that both sides, as in batsmen on both sides, they struggled. So I know it's interesting to see how they were quite defiant to say, look, don't have a go at our conditions and our pitches because we don't do the same when we go abroad ourselves. So that was interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's not unusual for matches to end short of 5 days in India. This is not a new thing. This has happened for a very long time. And I feel like a lot's been said about the pitches, and I kind of want to move on from it. But I mean, I think you guys nailed it there. It was perfectly sporting. Both teams played on the same pitch, and it's the home team's prerogative what they prepare. Nobody complains about the green tops they get in England. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about some of the strong performances from India. And the standout name is Akshar Patel. Now, if you asked me at the start of this series who I was looking for big performances, I'd say to you Virat Kohli, I'd say to you Rohit Sharma, I might say Ravichandran Ashwin, maybe Jasprit Bumrah, but Akshar Patel is not going to be in my top 10. Never mind top 10 of people that I'm going to suggest are going to be the star performers of this series. Armaan, did you see this guy coming? 27 wickets, 3 matches. He's got the best average in world cricket for for anybody who's taken a minimum of 20 wickets actively right now from out of nowhere.
I don't think he saw it himself. I don't think he didn't play the first test, if I'm not wrong. He came in, they made a decision, and then they changed their mind on the spinner that they took in the first game. Listen, I have to respectfully disagree a little bit about it being completely sporting in terms of a wicket. He was definitely aided by the wickets that were prepared. And the other thing I just want to point out is some of these games took place within the space of a few days at the exact same venue. It's totally ludicrous to suggest that there'd be such a big difference in the quality of wickets when you're playing at exactly the same stadium. You'd like to think it's exactly the same people that are preparing this wicket. This was an effective semi-final. 3 teams were trying to go in it. Once India go 1-0 down, Kohli is under a lot of pressure. The Indian fans really need them to get to the final. And there's definitely some dark arts at play. Listen, there are green tops that are prepared in England. Maybe Australia add extra bounce. But let's just put this into context. 2-day tests are not a thing that happen very commonly, right? They've happened, I think, 22 times in the history of Test cricket. I think that in Asia, it's only the second time it's ever happened. The only other time was, unfortunately, when Pakistan were playing against Australia in Sharjah in 2002. And that was a considerably weak and inexperienced team. When your teams when batsmen like Kohli, like Sharma, like Pant, like Joe Root are playing in a test match, Ben Stokes, you cannot expect scores to be under 120 and make 130 look like a competitive total. That is the reality of the series that we have just watched. I'm not even going to get into the umpiring decisions that were very, very patchy, especially in the second and third test. They definitely improved by the fourth test. So did the wicket. But by then, India were already 2-1 up. So let's put things into context. Let's really talk about the integrity of Test cricket and the integrity of the World Test Championship before we start to say, oh, you know what, it was completely sporting. Just because England might have not prepared sporting wickets is no excuse in a World Test Championship semi-final. I'd like to think that if it was Pakistan who prepared these wickets or West Indies, there would be points that were deducted, there would be investigations, there would be committee sitting. Listen, we've got to hold the game up. And make sure that there are no unfair practices happening. Otherwise, we're all wasting our time, really.
Wow, I didn't realize you were Michael Vaughan in disguise today, man. That's cool. I'll respectfully disagree with you. I think it's the home side's prerogative to make whatever they want. And yeah, if you were gonna go letter of the law, ultra, the spirit of cricket to the extreme, then yeah, you try and be hospitable or whatever. But it's not their job to do that. The groundsman's job is to prepare the team prepare the pitch as instructed by the board, and that's what they asked for. That's what they got. And the truth is, it's Test cricket, right? Test cricket is all about mentality, about testing yourself in all conditions. You talk about players who do well in certain conditions and not in others. If you okay, it's a difficult circumstance, and 2-day tests you're bang on. 2-day tests are not good for the cricketing economy. I can't argue with you there.
2-day tests.
And two and a 3-day test, and then Afghanistan
matches, and they haven't gone to day 4 or day 5. Apart from the first set.
It's not unusual in India for that to happen. It's happened historically. In fact, let me just go to Nikesh very quickly. Just one sec. Let me because I saw something that you posted, Nix, on Twitter, where you actually had a stat about how often or how infrequently matches went to day 5 in India.
Yeah, it wasn't. I didn't post a stat, but obviously I've been watching a lot of Test matches in India, particularly over the last decade or so, and the fact that India have been so dominant at home. It's England weren't good enough in this final test to make it go beyond 3 or 4 days. I don't think there was anything wrong with this particular wicket. There was nothing sort of unsporting about it. England again won the toss, again batted first, again messed things up, just like they have done previously. What more can you do? I mean, I'd say the one thing about the Chennai wicket, the first test match, people are saying, oh, what a great wicket. Well, England won that test match, and it was a lot to do with who won the toss. Is that what we want to see? Do we want to see the toss deciding the outcome of test matches? Because the ball did absolutely nothing for 2 days. And all these batsmen who've been hopping around in test 2, 3 and 4 were looking like Don Bradman in that first test match in Chennai. For the time they were out there was absolutely no issues. They weren't hopping around. The spinners weren't getting any assistance. The seamers weren't getting any assistance. It's a dead wicket for 2 days. So yeah, it's fine if test matches like that go into days 4 and 5. first 2 days are so boring, you're probably going to lose a lot of viewers anyway. So you don't want to see test matches decided by who wins the toss. And I think that was taken out with the fact that the ball turned from day one. England have got 3 spinners in their ranks. I know Moeen went home as agreed, as arranged, early from this test series, and they did ask him to stay on, but it was already prearranged that he was going to leave the bubble. So that was all fair enough. But they had, they had those bowlers in their ranks. They could have played that side. They decided, particularly in Ahmedabad, they didn't want to go down that route. They saw a pink ball, decided that, oh yeah, let's play all our sort of seam bowlers, swing bowlers, see what they can get out of it. That's not India's fault. They made those wickets, I think. Okay, maybe the Chennai wicket, it was a bit too dusty, perhaps. There were puffs of dust. There was a little bit too much going on day one. Ahmedabad, I don't see anything wrong with that. I honestly, the pink ball may have had an issue, but England again winning the toss and not posting a big enough total in that first innings shows that in these conditions, and to be the best side in the world, you have to play well in all conditions. India have just won in Australia, by the way, for the second time in a couple of years. So they've done it in overseas conditions in recent times. If England want to be in that same bracket, they've got to do it in Asia consistently, not against sides like Sri Lanka, who are in the rebuilding phase. They prepared turning wickets. Nobody's talking about that because Sri Lanka's spinners are nowhere near as good as India's spinners. So, it's all swings and roundabouts, to be honest. But all I will say is I don't want to see a test match decided by who wins the toss. And I think that was completely taken out in Test 2, 3 and 4. And I think that was for the betterment of Test cricket.
It's all pretty reasonable stuff there. And I think the one thing that you'll surely all agree on is that the England team should have done better. Generally, they should have done a lot better. I mean, are they playing? Is it a case of England playing too much cricket? If I know there's a pandemic going on, so it's even more pronounced the amount of cricket they're playing because they've got bubbles and isolation either side of tournaments depending on which country they're in. Is it a case of this just too much? I mean, they've played these 4 tests against India. They're now going to play 5 T20s. Then they've got 1 day as well. Then they come home and then they host. They've got 3 different countries visiting this summer. Like it's non-stop. Okay, the home series I understand, but are they just doing too much away? It feels like these tours are finding England and forcing them into this rotation policy they're not really comfortable with.
I mean, from here on in, I think they are going to be playing a lot of cricket. But if you look over the last few months, the likes of India, Pakistan, Australia, they've probably played more. Pakistan have toured New Zealand. India have toured Australia. So a lot of these teams are coming in with a lot of cricket under their belt. Pakistan's had the PSL currently, and a few months ago, Indian cricketers and some of the other international stars played the IPL. So arguably England had a bit of a break. Usually in December they're away. The South Africa series got curtailed. So they've had a bit more of a break. And it looks as though they're sort of prioritising maybe the back end of this year. So they're looking at the World T20. They want to double up and become limited overs world champions. They want to win the Ashes Down Under because they haven't done that for over a decade as well. So they're their big 2 targets. And it's almost as if they're sort of preparing and gearing up for that. So in terms of the amount of cricket they've got to play, and also think about the riches of the ECB and the depth of talent they should have. I think that they've got enough people to sort of come in and rotate. It's about making those key decisions, though. Should you be leaving Jos Buttler out of a series like this? Effectively, he's played 1 test match. Should he be someone you actually say, look, this is a priority series for us? You play in this one, and then maybe when something else comes up in a few weeks' time, a few months' time, like a limited overs tournament, we know how good you are in that. We'll just give you a break during that period. So it's about maybe the correct decision making. Should you be treating Dom Best the way you've treated him? I think maybe that's the thing that should be looked at rather than maybe too much cricket. And just a word on the pitches as well. I think India, they've been rolled over for 50 odd and 30 odd when they've played in New Zealand and Australia. So maybe they need to start investigating those wickets over there and the over there, because if that's the way we're going to start looking at teams getting rolled over, India have got rolled over more often than most teams in recent years.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, let's get away from pitch talk. I feel like people have talked about it to death, and it just doesn't really interest me very much, to be honest with you. Beyond that, I want to talk about some of the performances, good and bad. We talked a little bit about Akshar Patel. I want a 1-word answer from all of you. All right, we're going to talk about Virat Kohli in a second, but before that, I want a 1-word answer from all of you to the following question. We'll go Armaan, Nikesh, Ankur. Okay, this is the order, and the question is Rishabh Pant the best wicketkeeper batsman in the world right now? Armaan first.
Yes.
Nikesh.
Yes.
Ankur.
Yes, followed by Mohammad Rizwan closely because I like Rizwan a lot.
You had to
One
say
word.
that. You knew I was going to come in with the Rizwan straight away. I think Rishab's. I've been a fan of Rishabh Pant for a very long time since his first IPL, where he looked absolutely brilliant. And I think he's had a stunning series. I do worry about the expectation that's being put on him, lads. Like, yes, he did that reverse sweep off Jimmy Anderson. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of a goal that Ryan Giggs scored against Arsenal in an FA Cup semi-final in the 90s. That was great. It was a great goal, but it is also the most overrated goal of all time. Do you understand what I mean? Like, in the context of that game, like, yes, it was very cool, but it's not the greatest goal ever done. Jimmy Anderson's a 38, okay, the greatest, maybe England's greatest fast bowler ever, but he's a 38-year-old bowler. You see people get hit for sixes nowadays like that. Ankur, you tell me first. You've got the most sympathetic expression. Was it like? Are we putting too much pressure on this kid?
I think he the Indian team management put a lot of pressure on him, but in recent months because Ravi Shastri I think said that look, we told him to get fit, we told him to play smarter, and we've been particularly hard on him. And I think it's almost like if you want to bring in football again, it's that analogy that the likes of Brian Clough and Sir Alex Ferguson used to do. They used to be quite tough on certain players who needed it, and then they'd put an arm around a player who needed it. So it's that sort of man management, and I think it's working with Rishabh Pant because he's shown in that deciding test in Australia and in this match as well that when the situation requires him to play a certain way, he does. And when he wants to then open up and play his natural game, he's capable of doing that. So he's maturing a lot quicker. He is improving with his stumping. He's still got a lot to work on. But in terms of his game intelligence, I think he's really maturing. And it looks like he's getting fitter as well. So I think that the pressure has actually been good for him. He's taking it on board and he's relishing it and reveling in it.
Yeah, and one player who's and he's been fantastic. Let's not understate that. Just in that sort of mini leadership role, almost in the middle order, he's doing a great job. One person who's not done a great job with the bat, but arguably been spectacular as captain, is Virat Kohli. How do you kind of surmise his performance, Armaan? Like, he hasn't really done very well with the bat. He got a duck in this last test match, but he's managed to get his team from 1-0 to 3-1, exploiting conditions, putting on the right bowlers, backing the right players, tactically been astute, reviews at the right time. Like, he's been pretty much flawless as captain on the field. How do you kind of surmise that whole performance?
I think he's going through a bad patch when it comes to scoring runs, which is uncharacteristic. We've seen it a few times with him when he's come to England a couple of seasons ago. Listen, let me just, whatever I'm going to say, let me just say, Virat Kohli is probably the best batsman I've ever seen, barring Brian Lara, and possibly Sachin. But he's more attacking than both of those, and is proven to be a match winner for India in all forms. So he is a brilliant cricketer. I actually just think that he definitely has had a good series as captain. I think there was a lot of pressure. He left Australia. They got humiliated. Ajinkya Rughani took over. They won the series. He comes to India, they get hammered in the first, and there's a lot of pressure on him. There's this conflict going on with Sharma and the team behind the scenes. There was the IPO problems that they were having, and everything. There was a lot of pressure on him. And I think that the great sign of champions are not just how they are when they win, but how they respond to adversity. And seeing Kohli's passion has been brilliant. It's always box office. I like seeing personalities. Having said that, I do think that he maybe was trying a little bit too hard to impress and was carrying a lot of baggage, and I think that's played a massive factor in terms of his ability. And I think he's in the last 12 innings he's scored less than Shan Masood for Pakistan, and Shan Masood is struggling big time to hold a place. I don't think he's not even in the Pakistani Test 11 anymore. So that just goes to show that it's not just a short-term thing. This has been going on for a while. I know that he's had some issues with his time with his marriage, and he was having a baby, so he had to step away. And there's been a lot of things happening in his personal life as well. But he'll be back, and I think it's great that India were able to win, and he's just shown his true credentials as a true champion, I think.
I mean, Nick, is there any reason for Indian fans to get worried about Kohli in any way, shape, or form? And to give me a little insight into this conflict with the Rohit Sharma, is there really a conflict, or is it really just a performance situation?
It doesn't look like it on the field. I don't know if they're just both very good actors or just both very professional when they're sort of turning out in India colours together. Rohit Sharma is still the vice captain in the limited overs stuff as well, so it'd be interesting to see how that relationship develops in the England white ball series, and how they sort of work together tactically and things like that. I think it's overblown, to be honest. I think there was a lot of confusion about Rohit Sharma's injury in the first instance that he was carrying in the IPL, and then he played the last couple of matches for Mumbai, and then ultimately he was left out of the first part of the Test series down under, and there was a lot of talk about the fact that they don't like each other, the fact that Kohli may have been worried that a lot of people are backing Rohit Sharma for the captaincy. A lot of rumours, to be honest. I think they're both professionals. We've seen Rohit Sharma put everything into his performances in this series. As we've said, Kohli's in a bad run of form at the moment. I don't think there's anything to particularly worry about. I think he will be back. I think the one worry that India might have is it's a one-off test in that final of the World Test Championship. It's at Lord's. It's against New Zealand, who have a phenomenal bowling attack. If conditions suit, India also have a phenomenal bowling attack. They've got some of the best seamers they've ever had, and as a unit, it's right up there in terms of fast bowling units in the world at the moment. So they can certainly bowl well in those conditions. But their batsman at the top of the order, Shubman Gill's, sort of just lost that little bit of form after a really bright start. Pujara has not really scored the runs that we've expected of him in this series. Rahane as well. And then if Kohli's not scoring, you've got a bit of a problem there. You need your 3, 4, and 5 to be churning out those big runs, especially if you lose a wicket early on, which can always be the case in England. So I suppose that's their one concern, just that batting unit, that sort of top and middle order. They need to find some form, and I don't know if Kohli finds form in the white ball stuff against England, if that's going to hold him in good stead for the Test series. But cricket is cricket. If you're middling the ball, you have your fingers crossed that you're in some sort of touch, and unless you have an absolute howler, you can be relied upon again. So he'll be back, but it's just a case of how soon, I guess. And as Armaan said, he's had a lot going on in his personal life as well. It's not easy, I don't know if he does night feeds or if he's got staff to do those kinds of things, but it is, COVID lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know how much pressure is on him at home as well, but, certainly a lot to take in recent months, and he'll be back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will back Virat Kohli to come in. I mean, with Armaan, he's definitely. I mean, I love a good Babar versus Kohli debate anytime. I just think Kohli's had an incredible career over such a long period of time. It's not a fair comparison.
After saving his runs for England in the summer and then the World T20 later in the year.
There you go. There you go. The answers from Anks. Guys, we're nearly out of time. It's a shame because we didn't get to talk about Washington Sundar, who I thought was fantastic as well. Already put his hand. A net bowler a couple of years ago. Look at him now. And of course, Ravichandran Ashwin, the unsung hero, who's always been the kind of backbone, the spine of that Indian Test team. Brilliant. There's a T20 series coming up now. 5 matches. I want to hear your Glenn McGraths. I want to hear your Jimmy Andersons, your predictions, please. Let's start with Armaan. 5 matches coming. What's the scoreline going to be at the end? And who's winning?
5-0 England.
I love it.
You can't say that with a straight face, right? So I'll leave it.
No,
I'll leave it there.
Fantastic. Yeah, I tell you what, if anybody out there is into the old punting, you could put a tenner on that and see what you get. Nikesh, what do you reckon? What's the scoreline going to be?
I think it'd be tight, this one. I think it'd be 3-2 to India.
It's closer to the realms of reality, I reckon. Ankur, what do you think?
Yeah, I think 3-2 could go either way. Maybe just India. I think 3-2 India.
Yeah, I think I'll go along with that. I'm going to go with just to be different. I'll go 3-2 England. Why not? Somebody's got to back those guys. They've got a phenomenal T20 team. It just depends if they'll play them. Now, England is one of the best T20 teams in the world, maybe the best. And it just depends if they'll play the right 11 at the right time, at the right ground. Who knows? Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Everybody who's watching, you got to follow these guys in their work. They're just the most phenomenal people I've had the pleasure to work with, to know. Nikesh and Ankur, I've done so much stuff with over the years, and they're both great guys. And Armaan, you guys already know, is superb. So thank you so much again. Thanks again to the guests. Remember to follow us on our socials. We'll be back with a review of the Australia and New Zealand series very, very soon. Until then, post-match live, post-match chat is done.